Storyful is a social media news agency. So what I'm going to be talking about is not quite as much the ROI or how you use social media to talk to people, but rather how you use it to gather news and how you use it to find the kind of content that you're going to share on social networks. And that's what we do. We basically work as an agency for large news organizations, helping them find good, actionable, quality news and viral content from social media and use it in a way that they know that they're safe from copyright issues or any legal issues. We've been doing it now since 2010. And the reason I have this slide up is that one of the things that helped us build our processes was the Arab Spring. And we were following all these events very closely, but from a distance, like the rest of the world, because there was very little Western media able to get into Egypt and Syria and Yemen, etc. And as a result, things like Facebook and all the social media platforms came to prominence, and they were given a lot of credit for actually fomenting these revolutions, which is probably to give them more credit than they're due. What happened was there was revolution among people, and people were using these communication tools to spread their own message. It wasn't the social media so much that did it, it was the people themselves. And despite the prominence that they were given during these events, they're still derided and they're still looked down on to some extent, which is why we spend so much time at conferences like this justifying and proving why social media is valuable. But even with that, you see it in the traditional media. You see people with derisory tweets like this, and this is a bit tongue-in-cheek, saying those who can't compete tweet. The background to this is during the Boston manhunt, there was an internal spat going on within Reuters. One of the staff had been ejected, and he was sitting at home tweeting while he didn't have access to the wires. I would dispute this. I think that if you don't tweet, you can't compete in the news sphere, because if you're not tweeting, if you're not involved in social media, if you're not on Facebook, you're not connected to the best sources on the ground. You're not connected to the most relevant people and the most relevant content in any given situation. And a good example of this recently was Boston. So when you had the manhunt going on, this was the star. This was a police scanner. 80,000 people at one point were tuned into this police scanner via a webcam sitting on a desk pointed at a radio. And while that might seem a little bit disturbing for people who are in radio, this is circumventing traditional sources. What it says to me is that if you have the content, if you can find the content that's relevant and you can find a way to get it to your audience, and like Damien said, be where they are, you're going to be the most relevant source. So 80,000 people watching this. Myself, when I was called at about 6:30 in the morning to help the guys cover Boston, I had the police scanner in one ear. I had the local TV station WCVB in Boston who were live streaming. I had them in the other ear, and I had CNN on my TV muted because they were doing absolutely nothing for me. So the local guys were the ones with the relevant content. And so everyone else was tuning into this, and they were literally following the manhunt as it was going on and following the updates from the police. And that's the disruption that we were talking about before in distribution. This is a visual representation of how people got the news of Osama bin Laden being shot. And what you're seeing here is tweets. So you're seeing representations of clusters of retweets. And the two big balloons, that kind of looks like a pair of kidneys, are individuals, which is the most important thing. These were the guys who got the message out first. Brian Stelter is a media correspondent with the New York Times, and Keith Urban works in the State Department. They were the two first people that anyone latched onto. What's relevant for me in this is that it's not Reuters, or it's not AP, or it's not Bloomberg, it's not even the media organizations like the New York Times, it's individuals. The wires don't break the news anymore, because the news has already broken the wires. So if you're a media organization, what you want is you want to have those people, you want to have the Brian Stelters, and you want to have the Keith Urbans in your organization. You want to have people who know what's relevant, who know how to find it, and who know how to get it to your audience. You want them inside your tent. The skills of these kind of people are the ones that we've built up in Storyful over the last couple of years. It's a really unusual skill set because you're trying to monitor stuff in real time. If you're a local news station, your job is somewhat easier in that you're monitoring your local community, you're monitoring what's going on in the area in which you broadcast. For us, we're trying to monitor effectively the whole world in as close to real time as we possibly can. And when you think about the amount of information that's coming out, it's pretty tricky. This is just 30,000 Twitter accounts actually scrolling in real time. So We have about 600 different Twitter lists, and we segment stuff by topic, by country, down to city level in the States, so that we can monitor individual lists. And when we get an alert to something that's happening, we dive into those lists, see what the most relevant people are talking about. And it helps us filter this into something that we can actually use. So we can dial right into a small nucleus of a conversation and start extracting really relevant content out of it. And it's not even enough, I think, at times to go and start searching for stuff. You have to have stuff ready. You have to be prepared. This is a Vine, which is one of Twitter's new ways of putting out video content, just 6-second loops. This is a search for Pope and smoke when we were waiting for the alerts from the Vatican about the new Pope. And you can see how quickly that was running. It was just going over and over and over. So you need to be quite intelligent about how you start to filter this, and your staff need to be doing the same if they're going to find the relevant stuff for you. This is what part of my Facebook page looks like. At one point during the Arab Spring, we were following hundreds and hundreds of activist accounts from Syria, ones from Yemen, ones from Libya, etc., when all these countries, the stuff was going on at the same time. And what happened, because of what Damien was talking about, EdgeRank, I was clicking on these on a daily basis. My Facebook stream became this torrent of gore and destruction, and I never actually saw any of my friends on Facebook. But what we started doing is just segmenting them and creating interest lists. Anyone can do this on their page, and you just build up lists of pages that don't appear in your news stream. But anytime you want to find out what's going on in the network in Syria or in Kenya or Egypt or wherever, you just dip into these lists. And you start to build up resources like this. So we do this on Facebook, we do it on Twitter, we use Google Reader for RSS, we subscribe to the right kind of accounts on YouTube so that we can scan stuff on a constant basis. And it's the kind of resource building that's relevant no matter what kind of organization you're in. If you're looking for viral content, you build your lists accordingly. If you're looking for local content in Kilkenny or Mayo, you build your lists accordingly, and that way your journalists have access to this kind of stuff at their fingertips. What you find when you do build these lists is you start to appreciate the nuances of how they move. That you understand the timbre of the conversations, the kind of things that tend to get shared. And when something happens, you can react quite quickly, but you can also knock something down if you think that it's fake, and that's what we're having to do a lot more. This graph you might have seen. This is the Dow Jones Industrial Average. This was last week. The AP's official Twitter account got hacked by a group called the Syrian Electronic Army. And on the official AP account, twitter.com/AP, they announced that explosions had gone off in the White House and Obama was injured. And shares plummeted in an instant, largely because of robo-trading. But this sent shivers up the spines of every media organization in the world. The Guardian has subsequently been hacked. And anytime anything like this happens, everyone worries about social media. Everyone worries about, what if that happens to us? How can we possibly protect ourselves? Again, the best thing is to understand the medium and have people inside your organization who can react really quickly. Neil Mann, who goes by Field Producer, is formerly of Sky News. He was slightly restricted. They wouldn't let him use social media in as expansive a way as he was capable of, so he now works for the Wall Street Journal. Jared Keller is social media director for Bloomberg, and Jules Mattson works for the New Statesman. All these guys, these 3 tweets came out probably within 30 seconds of the AP tweet appearing. And they came out because these guys just know the tapestry of social media, and they're embedded in their organizations. They make sure that Wall Street Journal and Bloomberg and New Statesman don't fall into the same trap as Russia Today did, who went immediately with a breaking news alert saying 2 explosives in the White House and Barack Obama is injured, more to follow. And obviously they were completely incorrect to do so. So what you need is, you need these people, you need them in your organization, and you need to start building the skills. And it will pay dividends for you. West Texas was just before Boston, probably got overshadowed by Boston, an enormous explosion in a fertilizer plant. There was no journalists on scene. There was no content from journalists because no one was hanging out at a fertilizer plant waiting for something to happen. But there were people on scene. The minute they saw a fire, they started recording. And for radio, if you can hear this, perhaps not. There was a father and daughter in their car not far from West Texas. And literally the father stopped his car, he put the camera out the window and started filming the plume of smoke. And as he did so, about 30 seconds into the piece of video footage, the plant exploded. It was huge. It shook the car. His daughter was actually temporarily deafened, and you could hear this amazing piece of audio, because the video was largely useless, of the daughter screaming, "Dad, I can't hear, Dad, I can't hear." You could hear the explosion, and you could hear them speeding off. And that's the kind of content that if you're tuned into a situation like this, you can find, you can use on the radio, you can use on your web platforms, etc. It's incredibly valuable stuff, and it's the kind of stuff that we're turning up on a daily basis. Same goes for Syria. This is the Umayyad Mosque in Damascus. You can see in the background on the left-hand side one of their minarets, 11th century minarets destroyed by the Assad regime. Obviously no journalists there to film that, but we had video from activists there. They shared it with us, and we were able to get that to our clients. ENCA are quite a small operation. They're very new. They're a young group from South Africa. They were an hour and a half ahead of any of their competitors, purely because they had social media monitored through us, but they were able to find the right kind of content to get it to their clients really quickly. They said it was the kind of story that they would never have been able to cover had they not had access to social media content. So it's hugely useful. It's hugely valuable. The question is always, how do you go about building these teams internally? How do you go about building the skills? In every single organization, and particularly the ones like Spin 103, and pretty much anyone, I know I was speaking to someone from News Talk the other day, there are people dying to do this for news organizations. There are people absolutely clamoring to be allowed to just bring the news organizations forward, start helping you mine this stuff, mine all the platforms for the right kind of content. Let them understand it yourselves. It has to permeate the company from the top down. You can't simply appoint a social media editor and say, you're the person in charge of social media, you're going to do it for the company. If you imagine back in the day when email took over fax, would you have appointed someone as the email manager and said, you're going to take care of email for the company? Anyone who needs to send an email comes through you. No, you wouldn't, because that'd be rather foolish. I'll leave you with a resource, and this is one of the best I've seen in a long time. It's by Sverige Radio in Sweden. I think you've someone from Sverige in the audience. It's a really good quote from them. It's about starting to build a network that will eventually contribute to more people seeing your work, giving you further perspectives, a greater inflow of ideas, and making your journalism more relevant for your listeners and readers. That's right up the front of this book. This will take you through everything you need to do for a small radio organization. There's a small link down the bottom that I've created which makes it easier for you to find it. Download that, read it, think about implementing as much of it as is relevant to your company, and it'll help you build the skills all the way through your organization to help you basically pull the best content you can and make your content more relevant. And also, another option for you is obviously give us a shout at Storyful. Let's talk to you about your budget, and we can help you through it as well. Thanks very much.
Thanks very much.